Okay, thank you, councillors. Can I get a motion to reopen the meeting? So move Councillor Kavanagh, seconded Councillor Davidson. All those in favour? All those opposed? I declare that carried. Now, I believe councillors want to bring a few items forward to early in the agenda. Which items would you like to pull forward, councillors?
I'd like to bring an allocation of funding for the Peacemaker Peacekeepers Memorial Statue forward, please.
NOM 1015.
And I'd also like to bring forward a motion to request for pedestrian crossing lights to be placed at Hartington Street, Glenroy, near the
NOM
station.
1115, yep.
And my general business, let me just see.
Can we bring the business forward? Okay. Sorry,
Can I do general business as well? Yeah. Just a request for process to monitor builders and developers. Yep.
Okay.
And also Merlinson Hall and Merri-bek College.
I'm just finding them.
Well, Merri-bek College is a general business item.
Okay.
Maybe we could do that earlier. And then Merlinson Hall is DCI 1715, page 96.
Yep.
I'd like to bring forward DCI 1515, Kids Undercover, please.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Any others, councillors? No. Okay. In that case, I probably will move through those ones that have been brought forward in the order in which they appear in the agenda, if councillors are comfortable with that. So the first of those is DCI 1515, Kids Undercover. Councillor Kavanagh.
Could I move the recommendation on page 82? And if I have a seconder, I'd like to speak to it, please.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Rob Thompson. Councillor Kavanagh.
Yeah, can I say that this is a great example of how things can get done in local government. For the benefit of the councillors of this term, is their first term councillors, this had a genesis in simply a conversation that I had when I went down to Brunswick, City Road Brunswick Association to congratulate Claire Perry, who had won the Coordinator of the Year that year. And I met there a lady by the name of Kerry Butcher, who works at Kids Undercover, and we got talking. She told me what the program involved, and said that they hadn't had any councils involved in helping out in that program. I came back to the then Chief Executive Officer Peter Brown. We arranged meetings. We then went to the Northern Mayors Forum with the CEO, and lo and behold, not only ourselves signed up for this program, but also Darebin, Banyule and Hume. And in the intervening time, we've donated around 170 abandoned cars in that time. Can I also say that a number of councillors went to see the program in operation, visiting a family in Glenroy that are part of this Kids Undercover program. And they have two parts to their program. One is sponsorship of disadvantaged children to attend schooling and university, but also the building of relocatable self-contained apartments, if you like, or units in the backyard of people's homes. So therefore the child that's maybe having some problems with their family can stay in the family environment, and these are transportable and they move from place to place, often staying for around 12-month period. It's a magnificent thing that was begun by Ken Morgan in 1989. You might remember him if you're as old as I am from Hey Hey It's Saturday, Ken Morgan, Toyota Cars. And this has been a lifelong passion for him. It's helped thousands and thousands and thousands of children in Victoria, and now it's around Australia. And Moreland was the first councillor to be involved. I'm really pleased to see this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Thompson, did you wish to add to that?
Just my commendation to Councillor Kavanagh for kicking it off when he did.
Wonderful. Is there any further discussion on this item? No, if not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. The next was DCI 1715, Merlinston Progress Hall. Yes, Councillor Lenka Thompson.
I'd like to move a slight amendment to the one proposed on page 96. And it's an amendment to point 1. So that point 1 reads that note the Merlinston Progress Hall report and acknowledge the retrieval of records from offsite archives was not undertaken and that records pertaining to the hall's transfer to council will be referred to a further assessment.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Bolton. Councillor Thompson?
Yes, I'd just like to acknowledge, first of all, the great persistence and hard work of the Merlinston Sustainable Group in bringing this to Council's attention and certainly their recent efforts in getting us all on board. It's been a long journey for us who have met with the group, and it's this particular report is recommending that we allocate a substantial amount of funds for scoping up and getting together a further assessment over the actual site. So it's one step, I think, in a very positive direction, and I'm just acknowledging with that amendment that the report that we've received at Council didn't actually speak to everything that was asked for in the motion, so we're just acknowledging that there is some more history to the site that needs to be undertaken in the further assessment.
Okay.
So yeah, full support of this report.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Bolton.
As a seconder, can I suggest an amendment?
I don't think you can as a seconder, but perhaps you can propose your amendment to the person sitting next to you, or
to the okay.
Okay.
May I suggest an amendment?
Certainly, Councillor Gillies.
Maybe while Rob's speaking.
Oh, all right.
Rob's speaking.
Councillor Rob Thompson.
I move an amendment to the.
Certainly. I think Councillor Bolton is happy to still second it, but doesn't wish to speak at this time and is working through an amendment with Councillor Gillies. Councillor Thompson, you have an amendment.
Yes, I just wanted to make proffer an amendment to points 3 and 4, and I have circulated them to you.
I didn't see them.
Point 3.
Could you read them out? I didn't see them.
Oh, he's just reading them at the moment.
Point 3 will read, refer $40,000 to the 2015-16 budget process to fund a further assessment and scoping, if necessary, of options to provide community meeting facilities in the Merlinston area. And point 4, receive a report following the completion of the further assessment which outlines the models and options available prior to allocation of further expenditure. And I have a seconder I'll speak to.
Is there a seconder to the amendment? Yep, second Councillor Samantha-Ratnam. Councillor Rob Thompson.
I know there was some concern in some of the questions relating to that you would only want to look at the Merlinston Hall upgrade, which I'm happy to do, and I met with the group today and was very supportive of that. But it would not be within my clear conscience that we don't look at other options there just to compare them, which is my adjustment to point 3, just as a comparison only. And I hope that it's a clear-cut decision that the Merlinston Hall refurbishment is the option that we want to look at. But more importantly, point 4, and I'm disappointed that I don't have a lot more support on this, is there are many more options that we can look at as far as the refurbishment of this is concerned, which may not lead us to spending any money. Discussed that with the group today, and they seemed very receptive to some of those options, to at least put them on the table and assess them. And I would hope that the report would come back with, if not 1, 2 or 3 other options that may see us moving forward with the building and returning it to the Merlinston community. And with your support, we can at least have those assessed and scoped.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Ratnam, did you wish to add to that?
Actually, I might qualify my seconding of it. I'm not sure they can add a further amendment to it. I probably prefer, just to speak to it. Look, I think the intent, I'm supportive of the intent around the amendment, and perhaps Councillor Thompson is open to a further amendment of his amendment. But I think it's good in terms of any report that we get and any investigation that we do, we should have all the options on the table. I understand concern when we talk about other facilities, but I'm interested in getting as much information as possible, but not to stymie the progress of the work that we're doing on Merri-bek Progress Hall. So if some compromise can be reached between those 2 points that has all that information in the report, then I think that would be a good outcome for everyone. So my question is, could there be further work done between those two versions of point 3?
Well, perhaps what we can do is vote on this amendment, and then if it's not successful, councillors can propose a different amendment.
Can I speak against?
Yes, you can speak against. Councillor Bolton.
I'd like to speak against this amendment. I mean, of course we can do all sorts of course I'm, generally in favour of finding out more information and so forth. But the question is, which this amendment doesn't deal with, is what are we going to do with Progress Hall? Are we planning to sell it off, let it eventually collapse, just be a permanent Christmas decoration storage depot? I think we've got to actually work out what to do with the Merri-bek Hall, the Progress Hall. And I think because it's become quite clear to me with discussions with the group more recently and earlier contact the group has had with council, that the community is very focused on Progress Hall, and there is also a use for it. If there wasn't such a focus on what to do with Progress Hall, I might support this amendment that Councillor Thompson's putting forward. But I don't think this doesn't deal with what we're going to do with Progress Hall. And I'd rather not see a council asset just keep on depreciating because we sort of can't. I think that it's probably because of this backwards and forwardness in the council why we've got a resolution about Merri-bek Progress Hall, but in the report it talks about possibility of other venues in addition other than Progress Hall. And I think it's that indecision. I think we've got to make a clear decision one way or the other. Are we going to look at preserving Progress Hall, or are we looking for some general alternative multi-purpose centre somewhere? And I think the residents have made a clear case that there is both the use, but they also want to preserve this particular hall. So on that basis, I would speak against it because I think the motion doesn't speak to the question of the hall.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Ratnam.
I'd like to withdraw my second apologies of the amendment given that rationale.
The seconding has been withdrawn. Is there an alternate seconder to the amendment?
Hang on.
Oh.
If I was to just add point 4 and delete point 3.
Okay.
Councillor Ratnam, if he were to just add point 4 and not amend the existing point 3, would you be
And I'll speak to it if I have a second.
content? It's another report.
Yep, sure. I'm happy to second point 4 if point 3 is deleted.
Okay.
So without preempting any of the models or options, what I've indicated here is that we can look at partnering with outside organisations that may wish to take possession of this and fund the possible refurbishment of the facility, and then through council's assistance subsidise the use of the hall for the local community. It could be a single option. There might be numerous other options that may come, and all I'm saying here is let's have a look at more options than just singularly spending the money and fixing the hall, which is only one option. There must be a few other options that we can look at, and I'm just saying bring those to the table so that we can look at them, primarily because if we're wanting to do this as quickly as we can, that one option there could actually start this Christmas, and we would not need to spend any money as a possibility if it was successful, and it has been successful in other locations. If we were to go, like we have with the police station just here, out to a commercial operator who said, I'd like to use the hall for private events, and we subsidise them for the use for the hall. And I ran this past the community this morning, and they seem to be somewhat interested in it because it retains the hall, it gets them the space that they're required, and we may subsidise it by giving them $100,000 a year as an example to say we want the hall on these dates for our community. And that could be one option, and then the third party that we've gone to might be able to upgrade the hall at their own cost over the next 10 years rather than us paying for it.
Okay. We are essentially still debating the same amendment that Councillor Thompson raised, which he has now chosen to change. I technically should take that as Councillor Thompson closing the debate rather than allowing further debate on this item. So I'm going to put his amendment to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Thompson's amendment? All those against? I declare that carried. We'll now return to debate of the substantive motion with the amendment incorporated. Are there any speakers against the motion? Any further amendments? If there's no further speakers, then I'll put the substantive motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried unanimously. We'll now move on to Notice of Motion 1015, allocation of funding for the Peacekeepers Memorial Statue. Councillor Gillies.
Lovely. Sorry, just got to get it in front of me. Where'd I put it? Okay, so I'll just give you the history behind this motion.
I'll just get you to move the motion and seek a
Okay.
seconder, and then you can speak to it.
So the motion is Council resolved to allocate $14,000 in the 2014-2015 budget towards a Peacekeepers Memorial for the Vietnam veterans to be located at the Glenroy RSL.
Okay, and that's seconded by Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Gillies.
Okay, so just a little bit of a history on this, and I have spoken to the CEO with regard to this matter, so we do know that finding this money is not going to be a problem in this particular 2014-15 year budget. So, Mr. Tom Clayton, President of the Vietnam Veterans Association, approached Council in late 2014 seeking help from the Council in order to raise funds towards a Peacekeepers Memorial statue to be located at the Glenroy RSL. Tom Clayton advised that the Glenroy RSL had committed to donate $4,000 and the Vietnam Veterans Association would donate $500 towards the project. The foundation for this memorial statue has also been donated. Mr. Clayton has asked that Council help fund the remaining $14,000. When the request was made, the CEO at the time had thought that there were funds available to help with this project. However, when this was investigated, the request did not meet the criteria for the Capital Works Partnership Grant category, and he was not able to obtain funding from the Department of Premier and Cabinet Veterans Grants. Mr. Clayton was not notified of this until late January 2014. This memorial has great importance to Vietnam veterans who were shunned after they returned from Vietnam. It is important to note that the same veterans have only recently been accepted into the RSL. There is a lot of pain that needs to be healed for the Vietnam veterans, many of whom were conscripted into service, and those who chose to fight for their country because the government portrayed that there was an imminent threat to Australia if we did not get involved in that particular war. Regardless of the politics and the ideological arguments surrounding the Vietnam War, it is important to remember that the peacemakers merely want to erect a memorial that pays tribute to those who lost their lives, and those who survived that particular war have faced many challenges and many are psychologically wounded. The memorial will help heal these wounds for the surviving ex-servicemen and women and pay tribute to those who did not survive.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Councillor Yildiz? No? Is there any debate on this item? Yes,
I
Councillor
was
Bolton.
just wondering if Councillor Gillies could. I was just wondering if Councillor Gillies could explain a little bit more about the Peacemakers, Peacekeepers Memorial Statue, like what it would entail,
Well, okay, what it would entail.
or what it would be like, or what it would,
What it would look like.
would describe.
It is a memorial, so it is basically a memorial statue, and it will be like there will be an area where you can lay wreaths, just like in front of the RSL at the moment. But it is a separate it's a separate statue to really commemorate something slightly different to just what that particular RSL statue at the moment is. I'm looking straight at Mr. Clayton now. And so it's significant. It is significant that this statue is placed at the Glenroy RSL and because of, you know, some of that history and the fact that, you know, there's a particular group that's only just being recognised within that RSL. So this is a really important event for not only the RSL but also those other groups that, you know, for whatever reason, you know, have a long way to travel before they feel like they're really, you know, being received, I suppose.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Is there any further debate on this item? No. If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those opposed? I'll declare that carried. Next item is Notice of Motion 1115, request for pedestrian crossing lights to be placed at Hartington Street, Glenroy.
Okay, I'd really like to ask that Mr. Clayton stay with this so that at my next ward meeting he can notify Rob. The motion is that Council resolve that officers present a report to Council on ways that we can implement lights at this crossing to make it safe for pedestrians. And that 2, Council lobbies to Vic Roads to help Council carry out such safety initiatives.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Yeah, sorry.
Seconded, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Gillies.
Mark. Look, the background to this is that residents have brought up concerns with regard to the current pedestrian crossing at Hartington Street, which is right outside the Glenroy station, and it's where the buses, you know, the bus comes in and goes out. I don't know what that's called. Anyway, the number of near misses on this crossing is a real concern for pedestrians, and the current traffic remedies have not made the crossing safe for our residents, visitors to our municipality and or our children. A lot of children come from the Glenroy High School and, you know, there's the primary schools in that area as well. Council have actually tried to you know, manage it by, I think they've painted the zebra crossing. We have actually repainted that in an attempt to make it more visible. There are some speed humps that have been installed on that road, but it is still a very dangerous crossing. The problem hasn't been fixed, and we've been told that Vic Roads are responsible for the implementation of any lights at this crossing. But while we wait for them to act, we're putting people at risk. And my mind goes back to a story that we heard just today in question time. So I'd really like us to be able to move on this and start really getting something done to ensure that we don't have a death on that pedestrian crossing.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Councillor Bolton.
Just very briefly, I mean, I certainly support the resolution. I think it's sort of fairly similar to the resolution we passed in December.
It is.
But anyway, I mean, you know, I certainly think, you know, if we, I think there is money it's likely to be allocated in the draft budget, and certainly it is going to become a more dangerous pedestrian crossing as the population in the area increases. I've certainly seen near misses.
Can I ask a question of the Director?
Yeah, I have some information here which may answer your question, if it's in relation to the December motion. No? Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
Are we in a position to implement this without Vic Roads' involvement or say-so?
Okay, to the Director.
How do I get the mic entangled? Through the Mayor, Hartington Street is a local road, so it's under Council's control. We do need Vic Roads approval because pedestrian operated signals are a major traffic control item. In this case, given we're funding the crossing, there should not be any issue in Vic Roads approval. It's a time process, but there should not be an objection to installation of the traffic lights, pedestrian operated signals. As detailed, there is currently within the draft 15-16 budget an allocation to undertake the works.
Okay. Well, there you go. We've got it. We've got it. Thank you, Grant.
So, Councillor Gillies, would you like to withdraw the
I
motion?
will withdraw that motion, thankfully.
No problems at all. So just clarifying that there's an allocation of $150,000 in the draft CapEx budget within the $350,000 traffic management devices, various locations identified by studies. So that's being prepared as part of the budget. Great. Good outcome. Yes. The next item that's being called forward is a general business item in relation to Merri-bek College.
Okay. So, actually, there was a couple of extra words that Lydia suggested, which improved the grammar of this, but I don't have that. I've only got my original typed version. Oh, great. Okay. So the motion is that Council receive a report at the May Council meeting outlining the current situation with the Merri-bek College site and proposing an urgent plan for the Council to gain control over the site for the Aboriginal community and the local residents. This plan to include one urgent advocacy with the new government, including considering a proposal for the Council to become the Committee of Management to manage the site while the future of the site is worked out. 2, exploring potential funding partners in the event the state government decides to sell the land. And 3, that Hume City Council be approached for support, given that the site is of significance to the Aboriginal community in both Hume and Moreland.
Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Gillies. Councillor Bolton.
And, well, firstly, I think people have heard in question time about the significance of this site. And I think probably there are several things. If you look around the whole of metropolitan Melbourne, but especially the Moreland Hume area, there is an absence of Aboriginal sites, sites of significance. There are lots of little plugs in lots of council and government buildings all over Melbourne, which mention the Wurundjeri land, if it's an area of Wurundjeri country or other clans. But there's a real lack of visibility of the Aboriginal community in this area, and yet we've got something like 3,000 Aboriginal people living, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people living in the Hume and Moreland areas between the two, but there's a real invisibility. And I think what we saw when the Merri-bek College was in operation is you saw there's actually a much bigger Aboriginal community than you necessarily realise if you don't have a lot of connection with the Aboriginal community. It provided a huge amount of support, and it was also a site of particular significance for youth and young people. And you can hear from the people in question time that people have maintained an association with that site and with that school beyond leaving school. And so I think if Moreland was able to keep moving forward with this project, Moreland could do something quite great for the Aboriginal community in Melbourne as a whole, but also particularly in the northwest part of Melbourne. It is very difficult for the community in Broadmeadows and Moreland to access Aboriginal services in Fitzroy and Preston and so forth, but also especially for the youth. I think Oxygen does a great job, but there was an extra component with this Merri-bek College site of language and culture, which you just don't get at normal schools. So it was a really grounding thing for Aboriginal students, youth in particular. And I think now that there is this Atiki Sports Club using ATC Cook Reserve, it actually adds, I mean, this goes beyond the gambit of the motion, the potential for the council to look in the direction of a precinct in the future. But at the moment, this motion is really trying to secure the land and stop it being sold off to a greedy developer for developer for housing, because then we will lose a public space. And I also know that people from the old High School for Coburg campaign have indicated support for this, for keeping this land in public hands, with a view to it being used in an educational youth way. So it's really just and this mention in point 1 about the council becoming a committee of management, I understand that was what happened when the council secured the Edgars Creek parkland from the state government. It was to manage that process, make sure it was in public hands, waiting for the negotiations to conclude. I'll just end there.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Gillies.
I'm fine with Councillor Bolton's.
Thank you. Councillor Ratnam.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton, and I'm very supportive of the motion. I just wondered whether we considered adding an extra point, perhaps, regarding the advocacy with the state government, and whether it's a matter of urgency that we actually write a letter now to the state government urging them to keep the land in state government hands, allowing us to use it.
You can think of an extra wording to.
That council write to the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, who also, I believe, happens to be the Minister for Local Government.
Okay.
The Minister for Aboriginal Affairs and Local Government, expressing the urgency of this matter.
Yeah.
And requests that
they keep it
keeps the land in state government hands with the capacity for council to be able to use it for community purposes.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm happy with that.
Okay, so the wording was, and request that the land be kept in state government hands with the capacity for council to use it for community purposes.
State government ownership, perhaps hands.
Okay, kept in state government ownership rather than hands might be a more formal wording.
I'd like some
public
advice.
Can I just make
Okay.
a suggestion?
Oh yes, because we have the councillor motion on the books to try and acquire the land. That's possibly contradictory.
Well, I was actually going to suggest,
so maybe
rather
put
than
that or that they.
Okay.
I was just going to suggest that just if you can keep it really broad around so rather than kept in state government hands, kept in public ownership.
Okay, great.
Because then
Good.
Yeah,
that can be
fantastic.
all sorts of things, and it doesn't limit us in terms of the
Great,
way the
thank
letter
you.
can go.
I
Okay.
agree with that. I
Public
prefer
ownership?
that.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. So Councillor Bolton, you're happy with
Yeah.
that change?
That's right.
That wasn't helpful then.
Excellent. Is there any further debate in relation to this item? No? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried unanimously. General business item in relation to builders.
Oh, that's me.
Councillor Gillies.
Okay, so this motion is a request for process to monitor builders and developers who have not adhered to planning permits and conditions set for the granting of permits. And the history to this is I have a number of residents approach.
Oh, I'll just grab a seconder.
Oh, sorry.
So seconded Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Gillies.
I have a number of residents approach me about planning permits and or conditions for granting of planning permits that have not been adhered to by builders and developers. And after the fact, it gets a little bit harder to, get them to move air conditioning systems and things like that. So it seems that council may need to monitor the implementation of special conditions better, and that there should be a real consequences for builders, developers who do not comply with special conditions for their planning permits or planning permits in general. In order to make this process better for all parties, including affected residents, there should be a process whereby those who do not comply with council planning permits are more heavily monitored in any future building that they carry out in our municipality. Because at the moment, there doesn't seem to be any way that once, just pulling one example out as the, yes, I can talk about it now, a developer who built balconies outside the scope of the plan that he had the permit for. Now, in the end, I think council as a council, we did actually, charge for that airspace, but it was minimal. It's too late after the fact, but if we can make it a little bit more uncomfortable for those who have not met those, complied with the permits or the conditions, it might mean that we aren't always in a situation where we're reacting and the reaction is minimal. So therefore, it's not in builders' best interest to worry too much about what will happen if they don't comply. I know we do have some things. I'm just saying that we could probably have a better process.
It's not so much an amendment, but sorry, can I just make
Councillor, you're the seconder.
Thanks,
So.
thanks, Mr Mayor. Just want to make a comment. Can we put something in there to the order of before the occupancy permit is issued?
Yes, that's fine.
Please,
that's
because
good, yeah.
can I argue the point that there are some road builders that will make minor modifications after the occupancy permit's issued, and our officers only would go out if there was a complaint made. But if the neighbour doesn't know what's going on, then you can't just Google Earth what's happened in or around that property. So I think if you could include something to the order of
That's great.
before the occupancy permit is issued, then I know it's going to cause a lot of work, Kirsten. I appreciate that, but there's a lot of builders out there that are doing this and they're getting away with it.
The CEO?
Thank you. Yeah.
Could I make just a proposed, or just to consider broadening that a little bit? So you're asking for a report that looks at the gaps, because you're acknowledging that, yep, there are some systems in place, but clearly there's some things that are still happening, so there are gaps that you're calling for us to examine. Possible next step in terms of enforcement actions, and I would suggest, rather than before the occupancy permit is issued, examine what's possible before the occupancy. So we're examining what can happen, because you're calling for a report giving you some advice on how that system's working and where the gaps are. And really, Oscar, you're asking us to look at what's possible before the occupancy permit is issued. I think that's worth making sure there's some words that allow us to examine it, but just to say that we're not going to be sure until we do this report what's possible. So if you put it in there as if that's going to happen at that point, I think that will be very difficult to be able to confirm until we work through the report. So, proposed.
Is that better? Yeah. Okay. Good.
Great. Is there any debate around this? Councillor Ratnam.
I just wanted to, ask a couple of questions of clarification and express some concern with the wording as it is. I'm not against the intent of the motion. I think we all share a concern. A number of us, especially who've been on Urban Planning Committee, share this ongoing concern and want to ensure that things that particularly we approve and the vast majority of applications that are approved under Office of Delegation are being built according to the plans that have been approved after all that work that's done by officers and councillors in negotiation in the application process. However, my sense of this is that we regularly get briefing about proactive enforcement and some of the extra resources that have gone into proactive enforcement over the last year especially. It is something that I think that we have a responsibility to monitor. I think this report is asking for how we monitor that. So it's asking for more information about what the monitoring systems are, what the gaps there we're finding, what is a result of that monitoring. We do get some of that information through urban planning status reports quite regularly. So I'm a bit concerned about the broad nature of this motion. If we want to identify specifically what is being found in that monitoring and then what the gaps are, and so then we can go, all right, here we're seeing 50% compliance, 50% non-compliance, then we want to put some more resources into getting compliance. I think that's a better way to go. I think this goes back to the drawing board, in fact, and I think we've surpassed where this motion is asking us to be, because council is very aware that people breach their conditions. It's very aware that it needs to enforce it, which is why it's taken a proactive enforcement approach along with a reactive one. So I'm concerned that it's just going to cover all ground. We're not going to learn anything new. I'd be much more interested to know what the specific results are of that monitoring. We get more high-level results. We don't get property by property, what's happened at this property, that property. Maybe we want more detailed information. But I'd suggest that we have a rethink of this, because I would hate for all the work to go into this when I feel like some of it's already been done.
Right. Very quickly.
Yes, Councillor Gillies.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, Councillor Ratnam. My only issue is that I think we're talking about different things. I'm talking about residents turning up to my ward meeting and telling me that specific things have not been met in terms of planning applications that were granted with certain conditions. So, like one particular plan, they were not supposed to have any air conditioning systems against the fence that would overlook the neighbours or be right next to the neighbours' bedroom windows, but they were placed there. After the fact, we really couldn't do anything, or we didn't do anything. It was reported and nothing happened. So that is where I'm saying I understand that we've got those monitoring, but what do we then do? What are we really doing and what aren't we doing?
Again, because Councillor Gillies moved the item, unless anyone is itching to participate in further debate, I'm going to take that as the closing of debate. Okay, in that case, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. We now move back to the substantive agenda. There is an on notice item from the previous council meeting, 11th of February 2015. Could I please have a motion to receive the on notice item response? Moved Councillor Gildies, seconded Councillor Gillies. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Reports by mayor and councillors. Shall I start at this end? Or?
I've got a report, but I must admit I wish these items were probably at the end of the agenda because of, we've got so much to get through. I'll try and zip through it as fast as I can. Firstly, there was a meeting of North East Ward residents on the 26th of March in Newlands, which with about 30 plus residents discussing a wide range of issues, including some that were aired tonight about the Merri-bek Childcare Centre, questions about when the Newlands Community Centre will reopen, the problematic expansion of the John Faulkner Private Hospital and its massive multi-million-dollar publicity campaign in support of its redevelopment, cycling safety, especially on Newlands Road, where there's meant to be a 50 kilometre an hour speed limit, but because of the hill, trucks and cars go much faster and there's a lack of signage. Parking situation in Webb Street, Coburg North, where the automotive workshops across the road are using the street as sort of privatised parking. And the common theme was the difficulty that residents face in dealing with the planning process. And residents came up with the idea of a position being created in council to help residents navigate putting their views into the planning process. Couple of other things I'll just mention briefly. In Faulkner in mid-March, local residents initiated a temporary town square at the Bonwick Street shops in Faulkner, and now residents are hoping it can become a permanent feature when the shopping centre gets a facelift. I gather it's the next shopping centre on the list, on the council's list to get a facelift. While I was there, an elderly man got knocked down by a car, and several residents said that they had been talking about the need for a pedestrian crossing in Bonwick Street for some time. Now, luckily, the elderly man was knocked down by a car that had just nudged him, so he wasn't injured, luckily, and there was a neighbour nearby to look after him. But it really did highlight the need for a pedestrian crossing in that area, because the traffic in Bonwick Street, in that shopping strip, has increased a lot. Obviously, that's not scientific, but in my observation, anecdotally, it has increased a lot in just 2 years. It's angle parking rather than parallel parking, so it's lack of visibility. some of the other things that I've attended since the last council meeting are the Kurdish New Year Festival in Coburg Lakes Reserve with around 1,000 to 2,000 people, and Kurdish people from all parts of Kurdistan, and also a Nepali International Women's Day event where it was organised by the Nepalese community in Pascoe, where a point was made that many migrant women who suffer from family violence don't feel safe going to the police, which means that properly funded women's services, community legal services and public housing is crucial to giving women the ability to leave dangerous situations.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Gillies.
I'm actually not going to give a report because I've got too many motions.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Councillor Kavanagh.
None from me tonight, thanks.
Okay. Councillor Ratnam.
I'd like to give a brief report about a ward meeting held around concerning the East Brunswick Village. This information has been circulated to councillors, so I won't read all of it, and it'll appear in the minutes. And if I could ask that a minor amendment be made to the text that the last line just before issues states the concerns raised by residents at this meeting, to articulate the number of issues that were raised. So this concerns the East Brunswick Village, which is a planning application that was approved at the last Urban Planning Committee. It is a transformational project for the East Brunswick area and the Border Brunswick area, 603 dwellings over 21,000 square metres, a project that's been in the pipeline for quite a few years now. The planning application came to us in February and was deferred to March to give us a chance to talk more to residents, because the development overlay actually excluded third-party appeal rights and notification provisions. So people weren't aware that this was actually coming to council, which was causing them quite a bit of concern. There were a number of issues raised, and most significantly around pedestrian and bike path, cyclist amenity and safety in the area, given that the East Brunswick Village backs on to John Street, which is part of the former Brunswick Shimmy Bike Path, which is the dedicated north-south bike route in the east part of Brunswick, connecting the south to the north. So it is a significant bike pathway, provides an alternative to Lygon Street and Nicholson Street, which are essentially impossible to ride safely on. And given the focus that we have on cyclist safety, this was a very pertinent discussion. So a number of questions were raised about how we protect that. A number of other issues were also raised about the development itself, how we would look after the infrastructure, the growing social and physical infrastructure needs of the community with the development this size, along with a number of other developments that are happening in that vicinity. So a number of questions were raised, a number of solutions were posed to the residents, proposed by the residents, and one of the undertakings that we gave as a council group at the Urban Planning Committee was that we were going to progress this further to ensure that we could satisfy some of the concerns and issues raised by the community about the broader amenity impacts of a development this size.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Davidson.
No, none from me.
Okay, I apologise for not submitting a written report this month, and I just wanted to touch upon a few items in a verbal report. Firstly, to note the passing of Frank Cox, OAM, who is a former mayor and councillor in the city of Coburg. Frank was mayor in the years 1960 to 61, 1980 to 81, and 1981 to 82, and was a councillor for 33 years. He passed away at the age of 99 on Friday, March the 20th. He was a life member of the Labor Party. He's also a veteran of the Second World War. He was a phenomenal advocate for the Newlands community in particular, serving on their kindergarten, primary school and high school committees, and was instrumental in establishing a number of major projects throughout Coburg, but in particular the Newlands Senior Citizens Club and the Newlands Colts Junior Football Club. So very sadly missed by the Coburg and the Moreland broader communities, and by his wife Clarice and family. Also in my report, I'd like to note that during the past month, we had an announcement at the Fawkner Community House from Minister Robin Scott. We received $40,000 in project grant for social cohesion projects, particularly with regard to migrant communities, which will be put in place by Fawkner Community House, which was a great outcome. I attended the launch of a flagship hub for fashion design at RMIT University at their Brunswick campus, which results in an extra 350 fashion students at the Brunswick campus, which is a great injection into the Brunswick area. I also attended the Glenroy Festival, which, as always, was a fabulous occasion. And I attended the Australian Local Government Women's Association conference in Adelaide and congratulate the Mayor of Boroondara, Coral Ross, who's been elected President of ALGWA for the year ahead. Councillor Tapanos?
No, none from me.
No? Councillor Lenka Thompson?
No report.
Councillor Rob Thompson? Councillor Gillies? No. Okay. We move now to officer reports. Corporate Services, DCS 2515, the naming of 2 new roads at 8 to 10 Walter Street, Hadfield.
To move the recommendations as detailed on page 24.
Okay, moved Councillor Ratnam. Somebody to second? Seconded Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Ratnam, did you wish to...
I'd like to commend the report as read, and particularly note that we have chosen 2 Aboriginal names for the roads that are earmarked for naming. This is part of our policy. We have a naming policy which identifies a number of priority areas that we look for naming within, and it has been a long-term interest of mine and passion of mine to ensure that we adhere to that. A number of roads that we've named over the last year have fallen in other priority categories, but I'm glad to see that we're acknowledging the importance of Indigenous and Aboriginal naming.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Any further discussion on this? Oh, yes, Councillor Kavanagh.
Just to say, I was going to move an alternative recommendation, but I've received advice from the Director, so I'm happy to second this motion, and I'll still be looking in the future to name what I indicated last month.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh.
Yeah,
Councillor Tapanos.
I rise in support as well, and I do think that those names are good selections. But I also just wanted to raise for the council's attention that in that policy that Councillor Ratnam has referred to, there are a whole range of other categories as well, including honouring prominent women in our city and also members of the migrant community. And I do feel that actually the focus tends to be a lot on Indigenous names, and we actually haven't named a lot of streets or parks after migrants to our city or prominent women. And I think that probably needs to be given attention next time as well.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Any further discussion on this item?
Make one point. I know I've already spoken.
Yes, Councillor Kavanagh.
Just to say that when we talk about migrants too, that like the Irish are grossly underrepresented as far as names go. If you look at almost all the street names, they're after English people, but hardly any Irish.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. If there's no further debate, I will put this item to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. DCS 2615, 2014 Annual Progress Report on the Moreland Rights of Way Strategy. Yes, moved Councillor Tapanos.
No, can I move deferral?
Oh, you wish to...
Or, sorry, I think Councillor Rob Thompson had a motion.
Yeah, I do have a motion.
Okay.
I'll hear that. I'll withdraw.
Councillor Rob Thompson.
Fortunately, it's not sitting here right there quickly in front of me, but I'd like to defer this.
Oh, it's on the screen.
There you go. The Council defer the 2014 Annual Progress Report and any subsequent Annual Progress Report until such time as the Bluestone Trials. The opportunity to receive the report on those.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Thompson.
No, it's a motion.
The motion now.
Yeah. Well, you are deferring it, but you're also asking us to make an amendment to the policy, which requires a report once a year. So it's more of a broad motion than it is a deferral. So you can speak to it if you'd like. You don't have to.
Well, I'm happy to speak to it. Council is currently undertaking some broad investigation into our Bluestone lanes. We are engaging with local community and having some well looked at trials, and I think that the reports that we're receiving back are outdated and somewhat discourteous to the group that is currently working feverishly to put something to council. And I think that we should wait for those trials and that report to come back to us before such time as we report back to council.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Tapanos? No? Is there any further debate from councillors? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. DCS 2715 Financial Management Report. Moved Councillor Tapanos, seconded Councillor Yildiz. Is there any discussion? No? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. DCS 2815 Assembly of Councillors, record 1 February to 28 February.
I'd like to move that with an amendment.
Yes, Councillor Matnam.
Seek some acknowledgement. Happy, just a nod if we're happy to go ahead with this regarding what was discussed about the planning briefing on the 17th of February 2015, just to amend the attendance record because there seems to be a duplication of names in that section. Are we happy to proceed with that amendment? The 17th of February. So,
thank you. I think it's Councillor Tapanos and Councillor Robert Thompson who are duplicated.
So the amendment.
They're both there and not there. Yes.
To accept the report with the amendment with the correct attendance for the planning briefing. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Matnam. Seconded Councillor Yildiz. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried.
Can I ask a question? Can we ask the gallery, because I think some people are waiting for some reports. Are we able to ask which reports they're waiting on, please?
Oh, okay. Is anyone waiting on a specific report? Oh, yes, the gentleman. What are you waiting on, sir?
The industrial land management.
Oh, Milas. Okay.
There's a gentleman at the back that's waiting for Milas as well.
Is there? Okay.
Yep, at the back.
Would councillors like to pull forward Milas?
Please, it's almost 10 o'clock. I mean, they shouldn't have to wait.
No, I didn't realise. We pulled forward a few earlier. I'm happy to just pull that forward. Skip to it. So DD, yes, Councillor Yildiz.
Can I second it? Yep.
Oh, it hasn't been moved. Councillor Kavanagh, you'd like to move that?
I would. I'd like to move on a slightly amended recommendation to the one printed on page 176.
Okay.
Point 1 stays as is, and point 2, to complete the Milas review in accordance with the stages set out in option 2 of attachment 1.
Councillor Yildiz, you're still happy to second that?
Absolutely.
Yes. Councillor Kavanagh.
Just to explain the amendment, that hopefully will move the process along a little bit quicker. And as I've mentioned in other forums, I do believe that this council, it should be the council to make the final decision on Milas. It's something that's been around for a while, as mentioned by, is it Mark previously? I think his first name's Mark, isn't it? Yep. It has been around for a long time, and I think this council should be the one to make the final decision. And option 2 on that timeline will allow this council to make the decision rather than a future council. And so that's why I'm in favour of option 2. Everything else stays the same, just the process moves along a bit quicker.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Yildiz, did you wish to speak?
No, that's good. No.
Is there any debate from councillors on this item? Councillor Bolton.
Can I just ask a question, just as clarification? So I think I might be happy with option 2 in order to expedite the process. Does that mean there'll be a period of consultation later on in the process, or that's over?
Councillor Kavanagh?
If we look at the attachment 1, there is still be consultation, but we will be a quicker form of consultation. It won't be as detailed as what it was previously. Can I say on the issue of consultation, on any planning thing, no matter how much consultation you have, and you're always told that you didn't consult enough. I can tell you now. So I'm not expecting people are going to come up to us at the end and say, congratulations on the great amount of consultation you've done, but that's never going to happen anyway. We can do it for 15 years, and we saw 2 meetings ago, we saw about the inner railway consultation about the selling of that, or the leasing of that asset. That was the most consultation I've ever been involved in. It seemed to go on for 3 or 4 years on council, and yet we still had people that came and said they didn't know that consultation had gone. We had thousands and thousands of people. So yes, it will limit the amount of consultation. It will do that. That is correct.
I'll make just an amendment.
Yep.
Yes, certainly amendment. Councillor Bolton.
To add a point 3, that as part of the consultation process, that manufacturing unions are included.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, Councillor Gillies to second that. Councillor Bolton, did you wish to speak to that?
Oh, well, just, you know, there's discussions with the owners of businesses, there's discussions with residents and so forth. I think workers' representatives should be included as part of the consultation process.
Sure.
They may not want to be involved.
Yeah, they
be
may
honest,
not want to
but-
be involved, but we should provide the option for manufacturing workers' unions to be involved.
I think they just be invited. Can I clarify what form it takes? Is it just to invite them along to the general public consultations, or arrange specific meetings, or
invite to specific, invitations to specific meetings, as opposed to, because what we're trying to do, what we might be saying is that we're mandating that a consultation occurs, and that, you know, we're assuming that there's an interest in that. So if we say that we invite the manufacturing unions, and then they've got the option to opt in or not, but that we are particularly writing to them.
so
Yes,
maybe
and-
that
yeah,
as part of
writing
the
and
cons-
inviting.
Yeah,
Yep, I
that as
think
part of
that
the
sounds fine.
consultation process, that manufacturing unions be invited to contribute.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, the director.
Can I just clarify, in relation to consultation, what option 2 does is it limits it to the exhibition period for the amendment package. It's not consultation like we normally do in shaping the package, where we have public meetings, we have focus groups, we do all those things. So it's purely a notice that would be sent to all the landowners, letting them know this is the package, and we receive submissions. So that's the difference.
Can I say, I'm happy with that if it means that the manufacturing unions are also sent a letters on exhibition. I'm happy with that.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So as Councillor Kavanagh is happy with the amendment, I'll just take that as forming part of the substantive motion. Is there debate around the motion itself?
Can I ask a question
Yes,
of clarification? Just with the amendment, it might be opening up a can of worms. However, is there any reason why we'd exclude other unions that have representation in terms of the employment in the city? Because this is to industrial land use, so there's a variety of jobs that we currently have that we in the future have to forecast and plan for. You know, it'd be good to have a wide variety of opinions. So I'm just wondering whether it should just be manufacturing unions or relevant unions to employment within Moreland.
Yes, Councillor Bolton.
But maybe we might get no unions interested in participating, especially given that the director's comments about, you know, the more limited scope for the consultation. I guess I was thinking the manufacturing unions would be most interested because of the nature of the land use in the Milas areas. But, you know, I mean, I don't mind opening it up to other unions, but I guess I was just thinking they're the ones most likely to have an interest.
Yes. Thank you. Councillor Tapanos.
I'm happy with that, and also to add as well, perhaps we could include a letter to Buy Australian foundations and other organisations that promote Australian manufacturing and the purchase of Australian goods.
What invite the whole country? Just invite the whole country.
There are obviously a lot of people that can participate in the formal process around planning that, but I do rise in all seriousness to speak a little bit about the importance of Milas. One of the key decisions Council does is determine its land use strategy, and this is what this is. It's well overdue in the sense that we haven't had a review of this strategy for some years now. And you notice our suburb has changed, particularly down south, but also up in Coburg North. Many former industrial sites are starting to be converted for mixed use developments to cater for what is an increasing population growth And as a council, we need to keep in step with that, and we need to make sure that we are doing the strategic work to be able to determine which properties we want to keep as industrial, which properties we say this is important because we want to preserve jobs, this is important because we want to preserve manufacturing in our city, and which properties we're able to say these can be rezoned. There is significant amenity benefits provided if these parcels of land are rezoned, and in the current form these parcels of land are not providing economic return through jobs for the city, and therefore we can have a look at whether they could be used for predominantly residential purposes instead. So it is a very big strategic policy. I feel that we've done a lot of work in planning with our structure plans, with our residential zones, and this is the missing link. And I think with this work completed, we would have undertaken as a council over the last 4 years a significant change of moorland planning laws for the better. So I commend this, and I do agree with the resolution as proposed by Councillor Kavanagh. The sooner we get it done, the sooner we get it implemented, the better for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Is there any further debate on this item? No? If not, Councillor Kavanagh, would you like to close the debate?
Can I just make a point to the minute taker, please? I wanted to finish point 2, just finish at attachment 1 and full stop. Okay, because the other part relates to if we were in the option 1, right? Whereas needs to finish at attachment 1. Thank you. All right, no, that's all. I'm happy to have it put to the vote, if that's all right.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. I'll now put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried unanimously. Okay, we'll now move back to...
That was the only requested to come up. Yeah, there isn't. Everybody else is here for the rest of the agenda. DCS 2915.
Local government. Can we?
DCS 2915, Australian Local Government National General Assembly 2015 proposed motion. Somebody to move, please.
Happy to move.
Moved, Councillor Yildiz. Somebody to second. Seconded, Councillor Ratnam. Is there any discussion?
Amendment?
Certainly, Councillor Bolton.
Okay, it's to add an extra point. So Council resolves that the motion as per attachment 1, blah, 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 be submitted to Australian Local Government Association National General Assembly for consideration. Also that a second motion be submitted calling on the Commonwealth Government to fund major public transport projects to prevent our cities from becoming gridlocked.
Okay.
Can I just say, Sue,
I'll take it. No, I'll take a sec.
That in the environment when you're there, that won't get a look in, but that's fine. Just put it in. You won't be taken seriously, is what I'm saying.
Oh, we can word it.
You can put the motion through, but I mean...
It can be worded in such a way that it's substantive around public transport issues and how they concern cities and why it's important that the federal government funds them. Is the mover happy to accept that as part of the substantive motion, or would you like... Yeah,
that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, the CEO.
So, just through the Mayor, it helps if the motion is aligned with the theme. And so the theme for this one is federation, which is what drove the motion to be about the federal assistance grants. So you can sort of see that connection. So I'm not saying that we can't explore that, but I think we'd have to think about what form that might take to fit the theme. And it would need a little bit of work to try and work out how that would be. Yeah. So it's not clear at this point how that would fit the federation.
Yeah, I think my experience of ELGA has been that councils submit motions which are both related and unrelated to the theme.
If it actually gets tabled. Because
I mean, it may not be discussed substantively as a result of the fact that it's not related to the theme, but it's important that we raise our concerns around public transport issues as a general rule.
Okay. Public transport projects.
A slight change of the wording for the minute taker. calling the Commonwealth Government to fund public transport projects rather than promote.
Yeah, that fits
Thanks.
To
Yeah,
fund
that's
public
fine.
transport projects.
And there must be a way we can fit it in with Federation. All those projects they built in Federation that they've scrapped since, all that public transport infrastructure.
We can
What's
talk
the other-
about
what's the second
Federation
part?
University and how hard it is to get to by public transport or something. I don't know. Okay, is there any
Okay.
further discussion on this item?
Speak to the,
Yes,
to the
Councillor
motion,
Ratnam.
especially to the original motion. I think it's important to note what the content of one of the motions that our council is putting forward to ALGA. In terms of this responds to the freezing of indexation of financial assistance grants that the federal government has announced, which will seriously compromise council's ability to fund its work. Councils rely on a range of revenue, range of income sources, so to speak. We often get criticised for rating the community at a higher level than the community sometimes wishes for. It is a really significant tension and one of the most difficult things that we do as councillors in terms of looking at the type of expenditure we can commit to in terms of capital and operating projects to deliver the things that we want for the community in partnership with the community. This type of cost shifting that we've seen from the federal and state governments are seriously compromising council's ability to function and deliver those things that the community has asked us to do. So I think it is important that Moreland speaks to this, and the second motion I think is also very relevant in terms of we need this investment from other levels of government in some of the projects that our community needs, and we have to do this together. And I think a further reduction in their responsibility and contribution is just going to be to the detriment of every community member.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. If there's no further debate, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. DCS 3015, Councillors' Code of Conduct. Somebody to move?
Oh, I've got an amendment.
You've got an amendment? I'll take... Oh, okay.
No, I don't think you do have a conflict of interest.
What's the nature?
Well, okay. Is there a mover?
I'm happy to move.
I'm moving amendments.
Um,
I've got some amendments.
Okay, well, I'll take Councillor Ratnam moving it with amendments.
You want to move your amendments
Yeah,
as
okay,
well? Or
yeah.
move-
Would
so
you
Councillor
wanna-
Bolton and I both have amendments, so I might move my amendments
Yeah,
and
you go
perhaps
first, yeah,
Councillor
that's
Bolton might add some to that as well. So I'd like to just make 3 amendments, and I have one question for clarification. So on page 70.2.4, this it relates to communication between councillors and directors. I'd like to change the final point and read, unless an alternative communication pathway with managers has been agreed to by the director. I'm happy to debate that based on advice from officers on that point. I'd like to add a 2.6 in reference to the, point 2.6 in reference to the final point, that the number of dot points there, that council provides an explanatory statement that defines the scope of what is meant by residential amenity in that point. So it's not a changing of wording to 2.6, but that we provide some explanatory wording around what that point actually means for us. And on page 71, add a new clause to point 2.7. So we would renumber the existing clause to be 2.7.a and insert a new part B titled Councillor Attendance that reads, if a councillor does not attend at least 50% of meetings that they are required to in a month by virtue of being a member of that committee in any given month without an apology, they must provide a verbal explanation to explain their absences for that month at the next council meeting. And I'm happy to speak to those amendments if I have a seconder.
Okay. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Lenka Thompson. Councillor Ratnam.
Could you read a couple of them? The first
Sure.
one
Yeah,
and
I
the
know.
last
Sure,
one.
so I'll also just circulate them on email so you will have a copy of them. So I'll just go through them point by point. So on page 70.2.4, sorry, I'm just going to find it.
Something about pathways.
Yes, sorry. So that's in section 2.4, the final point says all councillor contact with council officers, be it verbally or electronically, should go through the chief executive officer or the relevant director in the first instance. My point rewords that to say the pathway of communication can be with managers if agreed to by the director. And the reason I'm saying that is, I think that in terms of the practical implication of this, there's a practice that we agree to in terms of good governance and transparency and ensuring the right people are CC'd and informed of communication. But I think that if all communication had to go through directors and the CEO, it would actually stop the flow of communication, when in fact, in practice, we've established other forms of communication which are transparent and adhere to good governance. So I'm just saying that to amend that point to increase its scope, to say that if a director has agreed with us as a councillor group for us to communicate perhaps with a particular manager, with them CC'd, then that is allowed to happen.
Okay.
That's right. So it's just formalising an existing process and rather than taking that existing process away from us. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam.
Last one.
Yep, so I'll go to the next ones. Apologies, screens. So the 2.6, that's fine. So explanatory statement of residential amenity, and that's in reference to a point where it says we'd have a conflict of interest. We declare a conflict of interest if, for example, a planning application impacted our residential amenity, and I just wanted more words and scope around what residential amenity means. Is it one street? Is it your street, 2 streets, 5 streets, neighbourhood? Just some protection for us in that.
Want to put that in the policy?
No, it's not in the policy. It's that council providing explanatory statement to us that defines the scope of what residential amenity means in the code of conduct. So that's not a change to the text there. It's an alternate recommendation at the front. And on page 71, clause 2.7. So, I'm sure we've got that up. So there's an existing clause there. Section 2.7 currently is titled Assembly of Councillors, so it regards records of councillors' attendance at meetings, etc. So I'd like to insert renumber that whole section 0.8 and insert a new part B, which says, so it's titled Councillor Attendance. If a councillor does not attend at least 50% of meetings that they are required to in a month by virtue of them being a member of the committee, without an apology, they must provide a verbal explanation to explain their absences for that month at the next council meeting. And what this would effectively mean is that when we get an Assembly of Councillors record, every month we get a record of the previous month or two of Assembly of Councillor records. If a councillor hasn't attended the meetings that they're required to, and it will be quite apparent in the absent without apology or absent with apology if they haven't attended and what time, or if they had attended, if they were required to be of that committee. So we've already got the tool to monitor that. But it's just going a step further to say, well, if we're finding that somebody's not attending any meetings that they're required to, but they've signed up to all these committees, that we ask for an explanation. They provide a verbal explanation at the council meeting, at the next meeting, saying why they weren't able to fulfil their duties as a councillor. And I think this goes to due diligence, doing our due diligence as councillors, which is required of us in the Local Government Act.
I'm just, I think the point is valid. I'm just not aware of any councillor committees that require us to attend 2 or more meetings a month.
No, it's the cumulative number of committees. So, for example, in our current Assembly of Councillors record that has just gone through us, we had 10 meetings, of which,
I think that wording could be clearer. I don't think it's clear that you mean cumulatively. I read it as, say we had 2 council meetings in a month and you didn't attend at least 50% of those.
No, it's as contained in the Assembly of Councillors record, it could be. It's the combined number of meetings that you might have been required to attend, as documented in our Assembly of Councillors record.
Can we change it to say if a councillor does not attend a cumulative total of at least 50% of meetings?
Sure.
Over a year?
No, in a month.
Can I
the
just
month.
ask a question?
Councillor Yildiz.
When you say they must provide a verbal explanation, Councillor Ratnam, where? At a council meeting?
At a council meeting.
How are you going to get all the councillors in one room and the person goes, well, I couldn't attend that meeting, I'm sorry because of this. Is that at a council meeting? When are that? So
it does say
it has to happen
at
at the council meeting, but it might be a bit embarrassing to have someone stand up in front of the public. So are you going to do it later on in the meeting? Are you going to do it at the start of the meeting? When are you going to do it? You know, like I'm just thinking it might embarrass people to stand up and go, well, I couldn't come because my daughter was sick and I forgot to put an apology and I'm sorry. But do you know what I mean? I'm not sure whether having it at a council meeting is appropriate in public. Just a question. You cannot accept it.
I'm going to take it more as an argument against. The motion.
I just think it might embarrass some people, that's all.
Sure.
I'm happy to respond to
got a
that.
question.
Rather
as
than, it's not a back and forth discussion, so we are informed about. I'm going to take it as a comment against
Can I
the.
speak and maybe you'll suggest something?
Yes, certainly, Councillor
Sure.
Tapanos.
I'm going to speak in favour of the code of conduct, also in favour of the proposals, but I just was going to make the observation of perhaps adding assembly of councillor meetings instead of just meetings.
Yes. Okay.
So we do draw a distinction there. I have many meetings. I think I would have almost like at least one or two a day with residents, with other constituents who have raised issues. So I think we need to distinguish between
that's fine.
meetings which are classified as assembly of
council
councillors.
meetings. Yep, that's right.
On point two, in regards to a residential amenity, I just wanted to inform the councillors as well. This is something that is in the Local Government Act, and it is not very well defined in the Local Government Act. So we just need to be cautious in regards to defining something that might be more limited to what the Act beds, basically. So I think there we probably need to get some advice from officers, some good governance grabs, or even some legal advice, because it is, I know in the Act it is quite broad and it is open to interpretation, so I wouldn't want to be limiting that. But of course, councillors are reminded to use a level of judgment in regards to residential amenity and the impact it might have. And I know sometimes it's a fine area. Overall, I think the amendments to the Code of Conduct are very good, and I think it's a process which has been a learning one for council, and certainly a few issues have come up which have prompted some of these changes, but at the end of the day it's resulted in producing a better document, a document that we've given significantly more consideration to and we've been able to adopt tonight. So I commend it to the council.
Thank you. Councillors, the time is 10 p.m. and I require a motion to extend the meeting by half an hour. Moved Councillor Kavanagh, seconded Councillor Gillies. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Councillor Kavanagh.
Can I just offer a suggestion, just a slight change to the, where it says to find the absence for the month at the council meeting at which the absence is reported.
Okay. Yes.
Because then you've got it in front of you. You don't need to worry. I know it means it's a month and a half later, but at least you've got the record there, and you say that's.
That's happy with that
So are you
amendment.
saying it needs to be written then? Just written?
No. Still can be verbal, but what I'm saying is that Councillor Ratnam said the next council meeting, but we wouldn't know at the next council meeting if people have attended or not because we don't have the exact record.
That's a good amendment. Very happy with that.
So the Manager of Governance recorded that change? Okay. Councillor
The
Bolton.
move of the amendment, and then
Yes.
once these amendments are dealt with, I've got an amendment as well.
I don't think they're actually amendments. This is the substantive motion.
Oh, well,
Councillor
I've got-
Ratnam's moved it as a whole.
And then you
Okay.
can ask for amendments
Yes.
to
So
specific-
you
Well,
have-
maybe I should outline my amendments because they might be suitable for the mover.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, but, okay, so I'll outline my amendments and then I'll ask my question. So my amendments I actually did email through. I think I've just got to get them up on the screen. So mine is on page 72. 2.6.1 statutory decision making and enforcement responsibilities, and I was going to propose two amendments. One, to simply delete point 7 of that heading, and amend point 9 to read. So I'm proposing to delete a couple of sentences or a couple of deletions in that paragraph. So it would read, if you propose to take part in the consideration of applications at a meeting of a committee or of the council, you must not give grounds to doubt your impartiality. You must not be seen to be prejudging a decision which will be made at the meeting where all the information required to make a decision will be available. You must not declare your voting intention before the meeting. Anyone who may be seeking to influence you must be advised that you will not formulate an opinion on a particular proposal until all available information is to hand and has been duly considered at the relevant meeting. And if that's acceptable by the mover, I can explain why I've moved that.
Yes, happy to incorporate those amendments as proposed by Councillor Bolton.
Right, so I'm just receiving advice. This is actually in relation to statutory decision making and
Yeah.
enforcement
Local Government
responsibilities. So under the Local Government Act, these are statutory requirements of us as councillors. They're not things that we can alter.
So this has been drafted by the state government.
Yes.
Well, it's based on our statutory decision making requirements as councillors.
Because
James I can ask the director to provide further advice, but the director.
Councillors, if you look in 2.6.1, section 1, you'll see that as councillors, you may have to deal with Planning, Building, Health Act and local law applications. This is different to your decision making in other areas of council matters, and in that role you are acting in a semi-judicial process, and there's a requirement of you to act in accordance with requirements of such a position. It is different to some of the other decision making that you make.
Yes, Councillor
Back to the
Bolton.
director. I'm very aware that obviously councillors need to make decisions once they have the information and so forth. I'm aware of the statutory implications, but does this mean the state government has already voted on these words, and therefore, because what I was trying to do is maintain the bit that we need to wait until we have all of the information before we vote on, before we make a decision, but to remove what seems to be a ban on any kind of expressions of any opinion on elements of anything. When we first had a discussion about the code of conduct previously in the beginning of council, I think I moved a motion, an amendment to make sure that there wasn't a ban on councillors voicing an opinion on anything. These words seem very extreme.
Okay, so rather than putting a further argument, you're posing a question to the director. So to the director.
Sure, I understand these words are provided as guidance, so they are not legislated that council has to adopt it. However, I guess they are. It is provided as guidance by the state government. It's recognising that if you're in the semi-judicial type of role, you can't be both the judge and the prosecutor of the issue at hand. So it's trying to maintain a level of independence from the issue at hand.
In light of the contention around these changes, I'm going to take Councillor Bolton's this particular amendment separately rather than allowing it to form part of the substantive motion. So is there a second to the Councillor Bolton's amendment?
Can I second it as an...
I'll second it.
Councillor Gillies is seconding it. So I'll now continue further discussion specifically on Councillor Bolton's amendment. Councillor Tapanos.
Thank you, Mayor. The concept here goes back to a very old law, an old English law actually, which says that you must give applications when you are sitting in a semi-judicial manner, natural justice and fairness, and not be biased. So to do that, you must hear all pieces of information. So the concept of keeping an open mind is what is required by law, and there is case law in Hobson's Bay versus Winky Pops that outlines a lot of this. But that's not to say that you can't keep an open mind and still have views. So in having a look at what you're proposing, that could be fine, but I also don't believe that the wording that is on the screen at the moment and the wording that is in the proposed code of conduct is very limiting. When you have a look at some of it, it is important that you don't state this is how you vote, because that seems to be a definitive statement as opposed to one that enables you to have an open mind. And of course, with all these matters, it is the perception that you do give. So having statements in there like you must not give ground for people to doubt your impartiality is still quite valid in my view.
I think I've still got that in there.
Yeah.
That's from the original wording.
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, I'll withdraw that then. But look, I
So
think
that's
that,
the original wording with just a couple of things removed.
yeah, well, I've had a look at the original wording when I read it, and I didn't think there was a problem. But certainly, any changes are fine as well, in my view, provided that it is maintained very clearly that you do have an open mind and you will take all information into account.
Yep, Councillor Ratnam.
So I'd like to support these further amendments, and for a number of reasons. So firstly, for point 7, in terms of the deletion, agreed, we want good governments, we want good, open, transparent processes, we don't want prejudged decisions to come to particularly the statutory matters. However, I worry about the interpretation and the implementation of some of these clauses. So point 7 says, you should not organise support or opposition, lobby other councillors or act as an advocate to promote a particular recommendation on an application, agreement or on taking enforcement action. So my worry there is, yes, we shouldn't, where it crosses the line in point 9, where it interacts with point 9, absolutely, that's where your two tests are, to say, well, if you are then prejudging a decision and declaring a position before you have the information, obviously you've breached the law. But that point on its own, I think, can be open to all sorts of misuse as well. For example, if I talk to another councillor about saying, hey, on the urban planning committee, saying, I think we should go down this pathway because of all this information that we have. Of course, we're going to make our decision on the night, but we've had our planning briefing. We've had 7 days now to consider it. If I talk to them, is that lobbying them for a particular point of view? If that councillor suddenly, takes a dislike to me and says, oh, well, I have on this record, the councillor said that they wanted me to support this position, is that lobbying? And I think it's a bit worrying. So I'd much rather better words to achieve the intent of this than the words, because I think they're too ambiguous and they're too dangerous in the current form. And on point 9, the words in contention are the deletion of you must not indicate or imply your support or opposition to a proposal or declare your voting intention before the meetings. We've got the voting intention there, but must not imply your support or opposition. So what does imply mean? So if I've smiled at a particular thing, or if I've, nodded to another councillor, is that implication? So that can be used, I think, for good and bad. So that's my worry with the original words, which is why I'm supportive of Councillor Bolton's amendment, because I think you've got to take that ambiguity out because it could be misused.
I think the CEO wants to add a point. No?
I think from an officer perspective, the key concern is really around point 7, and if you look at we'll take two extremes. So what you've painted a picture on one end of the spectrum is how the wording as it is now could be used in a way that's not intended. So there is some, we can discuss some, it might be something we come back to give you some alternative words to do that. I think it's got to be very carefully considered as well. So if it needs to be an item we come back to, so it gives us a few minutes to deal with.
I think the amount of conversation and amendment that's taking place on the hop at the meeting, unless there is a requirement from the MAV that this be, there is. Okay, there's a requirement from the MAV that we submitted to them. So
We had 3 months.
we actually need to fix it tonight. So everyone, on with your amendments. Councillor Gillies.
Can I just say that I'm supporting the idea that Sue's put forward, because what we do in information discussion sessions would be a breach.
Yes.
So, and I've been uncomfortable with that actually, and I have expressed that.
There's been a suggestion that we may wish to lay this on the table until the end of the meeting and then table these.
Okay, sure.
So can I have a motion? Well, I don't have a motion to lay it on the table, so
I'd rather plough
unless one of you
it.
tables one, then we'll continue.
Do you want to test the support for these proposals, or is it a debate?
Can I
I
just
don't think I can.
make-
No. So, councillors, once you've made one contribution, you can't make 2 or 3 more. You make one contribution to the debate, and then we move on to
I
other
can close
councillors.
the debate on the amendment.
You can close the debate, but is there any further debate? No, Councillor Bolton, would you like to close the debate?
I mean, I've really removed, with point 9, I've really removed very little of that point. I mean, I'd like to remove more. And it is true that these can all be read different ways, as the CEO has mentioned with point 7. I can see that could be read in both ways of, I absolutely understand where Councillor Ratnam's coming, which is why I've proposed a deletion, because it seems to sort of ban any kind of collaboration or informal discussion, which you'd sort of do need some level of collaboration, informal discussion to exchange points of view and so forth. But I can also see the other point of view that it's trying to deal with, of something wrong happening. So I can see both points of view, but I am worried it is overly restrictive. And in point 9, what I've proposed is almost identical to what's there, but like part of the sentence that I'm proposing to delete is, you must not make public statements about a pending application. Like that can be interpreted in such a broad kind of way. So I've left in there about, you must not be seen to be prejudging a decision, which is the end of that sentence. So I've sort of tried to chop out the things. I mean, in some ways I'd like to chop more out, but I'm aware of this, that is about statutory decision making. But it could be read and interpreted to ban opinion. And of course we're elected to have opinions on things, and obviously you want to preserve the thing that you wait until you've got all the information, so that maybe initially you might lean one way, but then you've got all the information, so that might change your decision. But it's really, what I'm proposing in point 9 is very minor. And I can see both sides in point 7, but I'll still pursue that deletion of point 7.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton, for closing the debate. I'll now put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Bolton's amendment? All those against? I'll declare that carried. We'll now move to the substantive motion. Is there any further debate on the substantive motion, which now incorporates the amendment?
One question to Councillor Ratnam, which will have an impact on my vote.
Okay.
Which is just quickly, the bit about the attendance at meetings and the change to Assembly of Councillor meetings, which I support that change. Would that include information discussion briefings? Because my understanding is they're not compulsory meetings of the council, and I mean, there are various committees that councillors are on, but I understand that the information discussion meetings are not compulsory meetings of the council, and that other councils have a procedure where they're not compulsory meetings.
Well, they're not.
So this would cover information discussion evenings, because they're technically considered meetings where an Assembly of Council record has to be kept. So they are an Assembly of Councillors, so therefore they're within the record that we keep. However, just a reminder that this only applies to if you haven't sent in an apology. It's only absent without an apology. You can be absent with apology and this doesn't count at all. This doesn't take effect. It's only for when you continually don't come to meetings without apology, and it's over 50% over the whole month. So if there's been 10 meetings you've been required to attend and you've missed 7 or 8 or 9 in a month, that's when you provide an explanation for it, if you hadn't provided an apology. So there's a number of tests before you that this would actually kick in.
Or should I say, or leave of council?
Or leave of council.
That would lead me to propose another amendment to delete that particular amendment.
Well, off you go.
Well, I would. I mean, before I heard that, I didn't think it referred to information, discussion, meetings. I know a range of some councils do not operate with this as a compulsory meeting. I know I, for one, am uncomfortable with meetings of councillors which are behind closed doors, so to speak.
So what is your amendment, Councillor?
Well, to delete that particular amendment about the
It's not an amendment. So what words would you like to delete?
this
2.7
point
B.
B,
2.7
2.7B.
2.7b. You'd like to delete 2.7b. Okay. Is there a seconded Councillor Bolton's amendment? Seconded Councillor Gillies. Councillor Bolton, do you want to speak to it now? What's that, Councillor Rob?
I'll speak against it.
You'd like to speak against it? Is yes?
Well, unless we're going to pass a motion or a policy that there's meetings with a compulsory attendance, which would be a new thing, I think this is the amendment being proposed by Councillor Ratnam is suitable for meetings where there's a compulsory attendance. But I, for one, am uncomfortable, and I do attend a lot of the information discussion meetings, but not all of them. I, for one, am uncomfortable with a meeting which is not open to the public. And sometimes these meetings can be seen or slip into unintentionally to be, sort of de facto decision making prior to the council meeting, and that's what makes me uncomfortable with these meetings. So I'm not in favour of including these meetings as part of a motion as proposed by Councillor Ratnam.
Okay. Councillor Gillies?
I'm going to support Councillor Bolton on that because I have actually voiced my concerns about decision making in INDs or feeling like I'm being pushed to make decisions or, put my idea on the table in INDs, and I don't feel comfortable with that. And I do agree with Councillor Bolton that it's kind of it's information that we should be able to ask information if we need it. Information and discussion sessions should not be compulsory anyway. It should be about, and we should be able to actually research information of our own volition, not just through those meetings. So that's my position.
Councillor Rob Thompson to speak against.
I don't have any issue with either of those points. I think it's just purely common courtesy that we give our apologies to any meeting so that we know how many people are going to be there and that we don't leave, officers sitting there looking at one or two of us. That's purely the reason that I'd be supportive of this, that we should just at least give our apologies to anything that we are invited to.
Yep. Is there a speaker in favour of the amendment? No. Further speakers against to put the case? Councillor Tapanos.
Speak against as well. Look, I hear what is being said, but I must clarify, or at least correct in my view, that no meetings are actually compulsory. Not the council meeting, not special committees of council, not briefings, not committee meetings. Nothing is compulsory. So there's no real distinction there to draw briefings out. Briefings are a very valuable part of undertaking your council role in being fully and properly informed by council officers. It's not the only way we are informed, of course, I understand that, but it is a significant meeting where we do get together and we do, as councillors and directors and officers, discuss, ask questions and receive answers before we get into this forum. And I tell you what, it does lead to better decision making in this forum. It certainly leads to less amendments, and I encourage you to attend a few more because we might be able to discuss these matters at those meetings and come better prepared to this committee. So, look, councillors, I don't think you can draw a distinction between briefings and committees. I don't think you can draw a distinction between various levels of assembly of councillors. The intent of the motion is no less valid for a briefing than it is for a committee, than it is about council. It is about providing those who are in attendance, your fellow councillors and officers, and quite often members of the public who do sit on many advisory boards and committees, the courtesy of an apology or at least an explanation, a public explanation as to why you couldn't attend more than half of the scheduled Assembly of Councillor meetings within a particular month. I don't think it's a big burden considering we do get the reports. And I think that I know I'll be looking at the reports more closely and seeing what committees I have and haven't attended, and I'll be happy to provide explanations. And I know I don't provide apologies all the time either. And I don't think we are all perfect. And there will be many times when we do need to provide that explanation, but I don't think we should shy away from doing that.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. I'm going to put the amendment. So all those in favour of Councillor Bolton's amendment? All those against? I declare that lost. We now return to the substantive motion, and again, I think that we have exhausted debate.
Motion be put?
Yeah. Oh, I don't think I'm happy to just put it rather than moving the motion be put. So I will put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Can I suggest an adjournment?
That's a substantial motion.
It's the whole motion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I suggest a 5-minute adjournment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Double it to 10.
Yes. So there's an adjournment moved. Is there somebody to second?
Yeah, just a quick one.
Seconded, Councillor Yildiz. All those in favour?
Who said this meeting was going to finish?
All those opposed?
Who said this meeting was going to finish at 9?
No, we have to have
The numbers are with us.
We have to
All
have
5.
No, I'm for it. I'm for it.
You're for it? Okay, I'll declare that carried.
You're going to want
We have to have the agenda.